Have you ever seen your best friend wearing your pajamas, cooking breakfast for your husband, in your own house while you're sick in bed? I have, and trust me, that shock was nothing compared to what came next. It all started on a Saturday morning when I woke up with a 102-degree fever and a sore throat that felt like someone had stuffed sandpaper down all night. Sunlight poured through the curtains, so blinding it made me turn away and bury my head under the blanket. Birds were chirping outside, mixed with the scent of frying bacon, a smell that didn't belong. Because we only do brunch on Sundays and my husband can barely boil eggs, let alone fry anything. I pushed myself up, head pounding, throat on fire, but still clear-headed enough to realize someone was laughing. A high-pitched laugh, familiar, unsettling, dragging myself downstairs, gripping the banister like a retiree who just escaped a nursing home. I reached the kitchen, and there they were. Mandy, my best friend since middle school. The girl who cried when I broke up with my first boyfriend. The girl who stood beside me in a matching dress at my wedding. Mandy, wearing my cream silk robe, the one I saved for special nights, usually involving red wine and scented candles. She turned around, stirring a pot of chicken soup, beaming at Brad, my husband, who stood nearby, holding a bouquet of fresh flowers, which I assumed were meant for me. Mandy looked up and chirped, "Oh, you're awake. I made your mom's chicken soup recipe. Remember how much she loved it." And Brad, he smiled like this was all completely normal. "You feeling any better, babe? Mandy got here early to take care of you." I didn't answer. I stared at the robe, at them, at the spoon in her hand. My mother's spoon, the one only I ever used. And in that moment, the chill that crawled down my spine was colder than any fever I'd had in my life. 3 days later, when I was finally well enough to eat something other than instant porridge, I started noticing the cracks, the ones I'd always glazed over like the old tiles in the kitchen floor. Mandy didn't go home that day. She stayed all day. "Why? I'm worried your fever might spike again. Someone needs to be here just in case," she'd said sweetly. Strange thing, though, the one lying next to me all afternoon wasn't Mandy. It was our dog. Mandy was out in the living room with Brad, rewatching The Office. I hate The Office. Always have. But somehow, those two were soul bonding over every tired joke like it was a Shakespearean comedy. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, hair a mess, in my oversized potato sack pajamas, I saw Mandy giggling at something Brad said. I didn't catch the words, but I caught the look. That look wasn't friendly. It wasn't sisterhood of the traveling sweatpants. It was a look of a woman auditioning for a role in a play I hadn't even seen the script for. She was wearing a sweater. Not mine, but it was one I had gifted Brad last year. Brad? He didn't seem to notice. Or he pretended not to. Or maybe he really didn't think anything of it. Man, they don't read between the lines. They read what's bolded right in front of them. And Mandy? Oh, Mandy was highlighting herself in every glance, every head tilt, every smile with just the right degree of flirt. Like a martini poured to make you dizzy, not drunk. I carried my tea, drifting into the kitchen like a sleepwalker. But I was watching. Everything. She laughed louder when I was near. Brad got quieter. And the silk robe, my robe, she still hadn't returned it. I almost asked. Really, I did. But something in me paused. Like standing in front of fire ant hill. You could stomp on it. But you also knew things would never be the same after that. So I held back, retreated. But in my head, I started planning. Not revenge. I'm not that kind of woman. I just wanted to know who was playing what role in this little show. And more importantly, who was writing the damn script. The next day, I decided to try something small, a little test I learned from my mother, who used to say, "You don't need to ask someone who's lying. You just need to give them space to speak." So I invited Mandy out for coffee. It was a Sunday morning. Slight chill in the air, just enough sun to cast soft golden shadows under the old wooden chairs at this cozy corner cafe. Mandy showed up in a tight-knit dress, her hair in effortless soft waves, that kind of accidentally perfect look. She wore the coat I bought her 2 years ago, back when she was heartbroken and broke. She cried in my room, hugging that coat like a drenched kitten. Now, she wore it like armor, like what used to be pity had somehow morphed into power. We sat outside on the patio. I ordered an Americano. She ordered her usual coconut latte. We chatted about work, a new co-worker who didn't know how to dress, the neighbor's dog that barked every night. Then I dropped it, softly. You and Brad were really close last week. You two kind of seemed like soulmates. I looked her straight in the eyes. No venom, no sarcasm, just the look of a wife observing. Mandy shrugged and smiled. Brad's funny, easier to talk to than I expected. She stirred her coffee slowly, nude-colored nails tapping against the cup, a thin gold ring catching the morning light on her middle finger. And I wondered who gave her that ring. You two seem to share the same taste in shows. I added, The Office, right? I've never been able to laugh at it. She smiled again, this time more gently. Her eyes drifted away from me, off to the sidewalk where a middle-aged couple walked past hand in hand. Then she said, You should let Brad choose the shows more often. At home, it always seems like everything's done your way. I nodded, quietly. No reaction, no fight. I let it float by like a passing breeze. But I remembered everything. Even the way she looked at me right after, like she was testing my tolerance, measuring whether I was smart enough to catch the message, or just dumb enough to ignore it. When we parted in the parking lot, she hugged me, a loose hug, no warmth. And that's when I knew a line had been crossed. And the one crossing it wasn't me. I started watching more closely, not like a wife, but like an investigator, quietly dusting off familiar surfaces, looking for what had always been there, just hidden beneath routine. I stopped asking Brad, Where are you going today? Instead, I checked the car's Google Maps history. I didn't forbid anything. I just stopped talking. And when one person goes silent, the other starts slipping. One Friday afternoon, I came home earlier than planned. No heads up. The front door was slightly ajar, soft jazz playing from the living room. A tune I'd never heard before. Brad doesn't listen to jazz. Mandy, though, she's a Coltrane girl. I stepped inside, my heels barely making a sound, as if I might break something delicate just by being there. But there was nothing to see. No cozy scene. No bodies too close on the couch. Just the faintest trace of perfume in the air. The same scent I smelled on my silk robe 2 weeks ago. I opened the office door. Brad sat at his desk, work email on the screen. He looked up. You're home early. I smiled. Traffic was light. I said nothing more. Just set down a pastry box on the table and turned to leave. But my eyes caught a glimpse of a pale pink card in the trash, barely visible for half a second before Brad gently nudged the bin with his foot. That night, I went back for card. Not because I suspected anything, but because I needed to see it. It wasn't a love letter. No hearts. No poetry. Just a small handwritten note. Thanks for this afternoon. I didn't expect you to remember my banana bread. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad. What I felt was like finally seeing the real face of a statue I had long mistaken for flawless. There was no smoking gun, no photos, no motel receipts. But emotional betrayal doesn't need a hotel room. Sometimes it's in a laugh shared too easily, in the way two people look at each other over something that once belonged only to you. That night, I lay in bed beside Brad. He fell asleep fast, like always, breathing slow, arm draped over his pillow like a man with nothing to hide. But I knew the wind had shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet tilt of balance. I no longer wanted to sleep beside him, but I did because this game wasn't over. And I never walk away before the final move. The following week, I sent Mandy a message. You free Tuesday? I want to ask you to take some couple photos of Brad and me, thinking of printing something big for the living room. She replied in under a minute. OMG, yes. That's such a cute idea. No questions asked. Not even a hint of suspicion about why it suddenly turned romantic. Not a flicker of doubt. If anything, I could feel the satisfaction in her punctuation, the unspoken thrill of being invited one step closer into my private life, all dressed up as best friend duties. I prepped everything. A simple white boho dress. Soft, flowing, just formal enough to mean something. Brad wore a pale blue shirt, my choice, of course. It made his eyes pop. Mandy once said his eyes were mint chocolate chip delicious. I decorated the backyard. A few string lights, a couple of flowers, a bottle of red wine I deliberately didn't open, just to place in the frame. Something left untouched, unfinished, like a metaphor. The photo shoot went peacefully, too peacefully. Mandy directed us with glee. Hold hands. Now smile. Brad, look at her like you're in love. Oh my God. She was too cheerful, too natural. It made me wonder, was she faking this well? Or did she really believe she was innocent? I followed every pose, every head tilt, every smile. But inside, my thoughts churned like the silent pull of tides before a storm. When we wrapped, I handed her an envelope. She blinked. What's this? I smiled, light as air. A little gift for helping us out. She opened it immediately, didn't even hesitate. Inside was a neatly folded piece of paper, bold title at the top, waiver of financial claims agreement. Her brows furrowed. What is this? I tilted my head, played the fool. Oh, just a joke, really. Like, if we ever broke up because of, say, a third party, then that person would only get $1,000. Symbolic, sign it just for fun. A reminder no one's taking advantage of anyone. Mandy laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. Still, she signed. I knew she would. Overconfident people never read the fine print, especially when they think they've already won. That night, I sent a copy to my lawyer. 2 days later, I mailed the original to Mandy with a sticky note attached. Keep this in the memories. P.S. It's legally binding. She called 3 times. I didn't answer. Texts came pouring in like a monsoon. Are you insane? What the hell is this? I trusted you. I thought we were sisters. And finally, just one last message. I didn't expect this. As for me, I sipped the red wine, the unopened bottle from that day, and thought, someone had to teach her the final lesson. Not everything ends in tears. Sometimes it ends with a stupid signature and a very, very well-sealed envelope. A week later, I heard Mandy had been hospitalized, not from an accident, not a serious illness, but from panic. Acute stress response. Her doctor told Brad when he called me from the hospital hallway, his voice low, like I was his co-conspirator instead of his wife. I didn't respond. I simply set the phone down and stood in the kitchen, staring at the sink full of soapy water, wondering, if this were a movie, whose side would the audience be on? I didn't go to the hospital. I sent flowers. A bouquet of yellow carnations with a small note, wishing you a speedy recovery. And remember, always read everything before you sign. Your old friend. I pictured her opening it, reading that line, freezing. I didn't feel triumphant, not even pleased. But I didn't feel guilty either. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. The final punctuation mark on a play I never agreed to be cast in. As for Brad, he never brought up Mandy again. Never asked about the document. Never mentioned the days she called him more often than I did. He returned to his routines. Folding socks before bed. Asking me what I wanted for dinner on weekends. Everything was back to normal. Except it wasn't. Because I knew he was never the victim. Just a bystander. The kind of man who watches a fire crawl toward his shoes and thinks, maybe it'll go out on its own. And I had no love left for someone who couldn't walk out of the smoke. One morning, I sat down and wrote a letter by hand, Something I hadn't done since Yahoo Messenger was a thing. I wrote to myself, from now on, I won't live in relationships that need surveillance. I'm not a guard. I am the owner of my own life. I folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it on the bedroom mirror. 2 months later, I had a lawyer file the divorce papers. No drama, no tears, no infidelity. But something had been lost that couldn't be recovered. Trust, not in men, but in the sisterhood between women who once called each other ride or die. And that was the part that hurt the most. I moved into a new apartment near downtown. Got a black cat, named her contract. She doesn't flatter. She doesn't sit in your lap without a reason. She's honest, and I see myself in her. As for Mandy, I heard she moved to another city. Quietly, no goodbyes. No one saw her off. She quit her job, vanished from social media. I didn't care. No more anger, no thirst for revenge. Because sometimes the price has already been paid. With the exact thing she once used as currency. Another woman's trust. The lesson? Just because someone smiles at you, hugs you, and compliments your husband, doesn't mean they love you. Some people stand beside you just to monitor the moment you fall. And when you do, they don't reach out to help. They step over you, smile, and use exactly what you gave them to climb higher. From now on, I don't blame myself for being too kind. I just remind myself, kindness isn't blindness, and trust should be signed with consciousness, not emotion. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this story. If you've ever gone through something similar, when trust was exchanged for betrayal by someone you once called a best friend, please feel free to share your experience in the comments. You are not alone. And maybe, just maybe, your story will help someone else wake up, just like mine did. If this story gave you something to think about, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Every bit of support you give is a quiet but powerful nudge that tells me, keep telling the truth, the bitter ones, the deep ones, and most importantly, the ones that are never sugar-coated.